Okay, everybody, it's time I talked about, as promised for this week, about this vlog based on me. Why did I waste my 20s? I've been wanting to do this video since last month, and I apologize, but I need to get on with the point. If you should know that, a lot of you should know, I had turned 30 years old last month in September on Labor Day weekend, September the 5th of 2022. And I had all this time to rebuttal and think about all of my shortcomings and failures and, all the stuff that led to why I feel like currently a failure in life. For someone who's been doing YouTube for 10 years, social media for that same amount of time as well, and all of the time I spent in my 20s basically hardly doing anything about my life and what purpose I wish I had. Yeah, I'm already been past 30 years old. I had turned 30 last month, but I do want to talk about why did I waste my 20s and what did I do to my 20s to waste them so much, and why I feel like and I also want to give advice for any future 20-year-old out there right now, if they're watching, to not end up like me or any future or any 30-year-old right now like myself. And especially if you are for someone who has a passion for something like what I have, please do not end up like me in the near future, because there was a lot of stuff that I've done in my 20s that is why I wasn't successful. And I'm even if I made it 10 years onto YouTube doing this YouTube channel about Power Rangers and my fan film content of Power Rangers, and if you're also an aspiring would-be filmmaker who also likes who want to do fan films, or if you're into that thing, don't end up like me also with this. When I started this YouTube channel in 2012, when I was 20 years old when I started this channel, I was supposed to be what I was supposed to be as a Power Rangers YouTuber. I was wanting to do fan films of Power Rangers and in my 20s, and it was about Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. But as time went on, here I am 2022, and at the time of this video, 2022 is almost over. It's October the 26th at the time I recorded this vlog and filmed it. When you're getting this, it will be October 27th, so it's a few days away from Halloween at the time of this recording. And I thought about all of the amount of time I wasted just focusing on the more lineal or menial things that shouldn't even matter to me. But I had like a lot of worry warts in my 20s. I was very anxious about things, very depressed and angry and obsessive. And there was like a lot of stuff that led to why I failed in my 20s and why I didn't have any kind of success in terms of like outside of YouTube with like a personal life thing, like jobs, college, relationships. I didn't do any of those things in my 20s at all. Instead, I spent most of my 20s on this particular hobby here, that being YouTube and social media, and doing my fan film thing of Power Rangers, and because it was something I was all about. But I was really having a hard time throughout my 20s trying to get away from that life I had once high school had finished for me. And I never did move on from high school after, even though I had already graduated, got my diploma and all that cap and gown. But I spent years, these last 11 years, still dwelling on high school, dwelling on what I did back then. And especially that one time I was doing said Power Rangers fan film project in high school. And I'm speaking as someone who's a Power Rangers YouTuber, but also talking as myself. But as a Power Rangers YouTuber and a would-be YouTuber, that was my passion. But I'll discuss that later on about, how I made that fan film as a passion project before it became a project of my obsession. The film, but again, I was really fixated on my thing because of, that's what I spent my 20s on, was my fixation on trying to get that said project, if you know what fan film project I'm talking about. And in those years after high school, I just never knew when to let go of those I went to school with, teachers and other staff I knew back then, because most of them had already left the school as of now in the 12 years since almost nearly 12 years since I left. I really need to let that all go. And basically, I did waste my 20s on dwelling on high school and, well, mainly the 12th grade, because I've talked about the 12th grade a lot regarding, when I was trying to do a fan film of Power Rangers when I was 18 years old. 18, I was literally legal, no longer a minor, but they still, even when I was still in school, if I was still in high school at 18, they would still treat me like as though if I was still a minor under 18 in high school doing stupid shenanigans like you would. I knew that after high school, I was going to have a lot of problems in my 20s. And for someone who used to be formerly a special needs, special ed student at Gaithersburg High School, I knew that eventually once I got into the real world, making YouTube videos and all this other stuff I've been doing on the internet. And I wish that if I had done more like going out, meeting new people and let go of people I went to school with, then I would be all right. But right now I'm focusing on getting my life together after all of the dark dreck that I have gone through for 11 years after I had finished high school and when Power Rangers Lost Galaxy The Rise of Shrekina didn't make it. And again, if you want to, for any aspiring Power Ranger fans in their 20s that want to do their own fan films of any season, don't end up like what I have done with Lost Galaxy. It's not worth it, because if I did a in-person video vlog about why Rise of Shrekina didn't make it, the original version of that, and then even the fan films of Power Rangers I've done. But even though I spent my entire 20s on Power Rangers and, doing videos about the Neo Saban era and all the other lineal stuff that it shouldn't really concern me throughout my 20s, because as a 20-something who is supposed to be focusing on their 9-to-5 day job and also college and other factors of being a 20-something, I wish that if I had done, more of that than this, but even though I was not going to balance out real life problems and real life situations while I was doing this Fantasyland situation of doing this YouTube channel. And also wherever I am on social media, that being Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. I don't do, like I said, TikTok or Snapchat. I did spend my entire 20s like any 20-something during the last decade on social media. That was another factor, because given I had a serious ego issue, I really had a hard time trying to break off using social media every few minutes or few hours. And the social media thing, as much as I like social media, but social media has become a very scarce thing with my life, to the point I just can't get off of it for somehow, just like with the internet in general. And I know that there's nothing wrong using social media, but when you're in the real world, meeting real people and doing real world things like jobs and meeting new people, getting married and all that stuff, I never got to do a lot of that stuff in my 20s. And for someone who was formerly a special needs student and currently a man in Gaithersburg with those issues and with no one that I can relate to, because a majority of the mainstream adults out there, they just think I don't exist, or I'm just like one of those people who live at home with parents when I've said this before, my parents had died 14 years apart. I had my dad when I was still in my early 20s until I was 23 years old, and then 3 days later he passed away. So I don't live with a mom or a dad as a grown-ass adult man in his 20s and even 30, okay? So I don't live with parents. Although when I did started this YouTube channel, I was still living with my dad because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life throughout my 20s, because I was still hung up on my passion project that was actually more of an obsession project rather. And then the shenanigans I did on social media, Facebook and stuff, and the stuff I posted about my Power Ranger fan, and then stuff about what happened back in 12th grade. And I've been trying to explain to people about what I had gone through, but nowadays no one cares, because I've always wanted to talk about that stuff, but I don't think I have the courage to talk about what really went on. I know some will say and decry it as bullshit and me being a troll on the internet possibly, and maybe I was making it up all for attention seeking like I would. But again, I struggled trying to meet new people when I was in my 20s, because when I was in my 20s I was alone. And even at 30 years old, I'm still alone today. But I do have people I do follow and be friends with on social media, but it's just not the same. And that's the problem with my thing with me in social media, and what led to my wasting of my 20s with all this loneliness, being with my devices like smartphone or tablet or my computer, using social media and YouTube. It's just not the same. You know, meeting people up front in person, it just feels very parasocial. Like, I wish I would, you know, if I had the money that I would have right now to go and travel, meet people, even if they're famous or not, at conventions or wherever, and I would do those things. I wish I had traveled. I wish I saved up enough money from what I'm doing in my personal secret job to do what I could do to get by, so I can be able to be like everybody out there. But no, I'm still here making, you know, useless, pointless YouTube videos about this thing or about myself. And to the point, that's what led me to not be someone of significance. And I have dropped out of society because of things that happened in my past that led to where I am, and what led to the failure of my YouTube channel and my failure of everything I'm doing on social. Being on the internet is fun and all, but when you spend too much time on it, you can sometimes get lost. And this is again applying for any future 20-somethings probably watching this video, because I know most 20-something-year-olds, like I was, you was, any of us was back a decade ago when we were in our 20s. We get so wrapped up in a lot of the stuff with social media, you end up getting lost. And I got lost in the process also. I got so lost trying to reach out to people, let everybody know I exist, and let everybody know I'm doing this, but everybody's on their own thing, and I was so alone on that part. That's where I wasted my time in my 20s, was just trying to, on social media, trying to reach out to people, even though they have different tastes in things, different TV shows, movie, video game, music, and such interest in what I was having. Because I guess maybe the stuff I'm into is bullshit, like childish bullshit. And as someone who was in his 20s, that was what I was spending my time on, was, Power Rangers. I mean, if I was into something more childish like Pokemon or whatever's on Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon as a 20-something dude, then I'll be labeled as a basement-dwelling man-child. However, I did spend my 20s watching more, even if I'm autistic or not, but I do spend more time watching TV shows that make me feel more like my age at the time, with grittier, edgier shows. But even though I have to understand the reason why shows like Sons of Anarchy and Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones are what they are, because those are meant for the more mature audience. But even when I was in my 20s, I didn't feel that mature when watching those shows. Yeah, I know about the violence, the sex, the nudity, the violence, the amount of profanity, and the drinking and smoking scenes that goes on in those shows. I wanted to watch that stuff because I wanted to feel that way. I didn't want to, it's just, the thing is, that was where the social anxiety and stuff come in when I come across anyone around my age then, and even my age today and older, that if I say that, they're watching shows like Game of Thrones or Sons of Anarchy, they're like, yeah, they watch those shows because it's supposed to be when you're supposed to be at that point in life. But if I tell them I watch Power Rangers, they'll laugh at me and they say that you still watch Power Rangers? Isn't that for kids? Well, so is like SpongeBob or Pokemon and stuff. So that's one of the reasons why I was not going to get by with that. And also, if I bring up Power Rangers, and I've said this before in my podcast and stuff relating to main subject on this channel, that every time I bring up Power Rangers around anyone at stores like Walmart or Spencer's or Hot Topic and stuff, they'll bring up Simply Mighty Morphin, and again, I've talked about that in the past, because of course casual people only know about the original Power Rangers and know teams like, of course, my favorite team, that being Lost Galaxy, or any other Ranger teams. But that's besides the point. But yeah, I spent my 20s dealing with people like that, because those are the casuals I was dealing with. Where I live at, it's hard finding anyone who is a hardcore Power Rangers fan who's into all of the franchise for people my age, because where I live at in Gaithersburg, it's not possible. Everywhere I go, and if I see anyone who know about Power Rangers, they're just casuals. They're just only casual about the MMPR stuff. And I've said this before in videos in the past, but now I'm bringing it up because that's where I spent my 20s on wasting dealing And even on the internet, on some social medias and Facebook groups about the hobby, I've dealt with people who are only about MMPR, and it just got on my nerves, and to the point it makes me want to quit being a Power Rangers fan. Like I've already mentioned about how last vlog, and I know forgive me for making the vlog about WWE the way I did, but I just had to make a point that time. And of course, you know, when it comes to something more mainstream like the Marvel Cinematic Universe, DCU, and the nostalgia reboots for like Ghostbusters and Top Gun and all of them, yeah, those things would get more attention, even Star Wars. I did also go to the movies in my 20s to see those movies like Star Wars, the modern Star Wars, and the Marvel and DC films I could. But I wasted my 20s not having money to afford when I get movie tickets to go see movies like Star Wars or any Avengers or movie like that in my 20s. I realized going to the movies by myself was very unfulfilling because I don't have no one to go with. Because I'm by myself. Being alone in his 20s can suck, you know? And that's who I am in real life off this channel. I go to the movies by myself. I don't have no one close to me I can go to the movies with and have that enjoyable experience. But being by myself and being so isolated and so alone, it sucks. When you're in your 20s, and when I was in my 20s, I felt that. If you're a 20-something loner who has no friends and have no one to hang out with to go to a movie or to a restaurant, bar, or anywhere, it can suck. And that feeling is why I as a 30 years old, I just don't find going to the movies by myself fulfilling. And when I'm around a bunch of people who have money to afford all that great stuff, I go to the AMC theater over at Washingtonian Grove in Gaithersburg, and it's just unfulfilling going to the movies by myself around people I don't know. There's millions of people in this world, and especially where I live here, where it's hard finding someone I can relate to. You know, I don't have no friends, guy friends and girlfriends, or a girlfriend that would potentially be a wife or, you know, one day for me. But it sucks the way how I wasted my 20s. And also, speaking of women, I'm glad that one of the things that I did do right that a lot of guys in their 20s tend to do is that I understand in order to get, you know, try to be social and stuff, that, you know, when you're a guy in his 20s, when you're trying to chase the girl that you want, who's also in her 20s, what makes you think you'll have any chances with that woman? The next thing you know, she's going to turn you down. Well, I spent my entire 20s not meeting with women or have any kind of friendships with anybody because everybody's like focusing on what they're doing. I'm just still on Power Rangers, YouTube, Facebook, and all that stuff. And it just goes to show that maybe I need to take a break from this hobby and be somebody and not just be wrapped up in this room or this whole household still doing this all the time. Nothing wrong with Power Rangers, but when there is stuff that I should have been doing all this time, like everybody, but now once I go out into the world and get a job and stuff, they're gonna look at me and see this channel and all the stuff I've done on the internet. They'll be like, don't hire this guy. All he does is probably spends his time at home just doing this all day, or all night, or whatever he does, or I don't know what he does with his life. But also, why do I want people to know that? Because you know how I'm going to get rejected by everyone, including women, for the hobby. I know there are some people who are into the same hobby as I am with Power Rangers, but not the fan film thing I've been doing for a long time. That's just how I struggled trying to be someone, but I didn't have no job. And even when I do meet people somewhere at like a restaurant bar or a hotel that has a restaurant and bar, or the movie theater, and I introduce them and I want to talk to people, but this is where social anxiety comes in, where I have a hard time meeting people. I have been, throughout my 20s, where I wasted there was the social anxiety of meeting new. I need to let go of people I went to school with and focus on where I am at right here and right now in the real world. And even on the internet, I did struggle talking to people I became friends with on Facebook, but it seems like I have a hard time socializing. I think this is one of the few things where autism comes to play. Even though I've been left undiagnosed with autism throughout my adult years so far, 30 and counting, I've been left undiagnosed after high school, and throughout the 10 years since I was in my 20s, and including when I was 19 years old, left undiagnosed with autism as an adult. How it is when you're an autistic adult, you know, especially if you're like me, it's hard to be noticed, to be seen. It's like people of the, you know, that's why I refer to neurotypical people as the higher society mainstream folk, because it's like mainstream people, they don't know how to handle people like me, or they don't want to, because they think that people like me should be better off homeless or in a mental institution or in prison, and all those worst fears that came to me during my 20s. Because, you know, given like how I mentioned about Chris Chan, and, you know, again, I'll talk about Chris Chan again later, but just as paralleling and given all the infamous stuff he's done, he wasted my 20s trying to meet people. And then when I do talk to people and they ask me, like, am I around here? Yes, I live around here. And then they ask, where do I work? And if I tell them I'm unemployed, they're not going to want to socialize with me. They don't want to socialize with some unemployed autistic man or some unemployed man who has mental issues, because they're going to think they're better off homeless or in an institution. That's where the social anxiety came to play with that, because I was scared to talk to people, you know, man and woman, even for men and women that were in my age group and older, and even the age group I'm in right now, 30 and over back then, but now those 30 somethings are now 40 something and all that now. So but it was hard for me to socialize with those people. And if I tell them about my hobby, you know, they're not going to want to tune in about it, because I need to think about what they're about. And before I talk about a little bit about me, maybe I should just be quiet and listen to them talk. And then once they're done talking, then I talk. But the problem I had was that I spent my entire 20s being all about me. Again, due to my time I spent on social media and YouTube and wherever else on the internet. And that's probably one of the reasons why I wasted my 20s there, because you know, again, when I was being socially anxious, and then the ego that I developed in myself since I was 18, 19 years old. Trying to think I was something more than, like, I was so high above people. But the truth is, I never was anything. And throughout my 20s, I had a hard time finding out my identity. That would explain why even when on YouTube, I was experimenting so many different types of videos to see where things would go. Instead of me just being about the fan film thing of Power Rangers, I would do videos of other things. I do talk about some stuff in pop culture, but I don't want to talk too deep dive into the more real world stuff like politics or religious stuff. That sort of stuff is not my forte. It's not my cup of tea. And that's why I refuse to talk anything about politics or religious stuff on my channel. Because if I did start talking about that stuff, YouTube's algorithm would blow up into smithereens if I did. So that's why I only talk about the thing I'm still into. But of course, people my age then and even my age today probably don't care about this thing I'm doing, because everybody's into their own stuff and I should be into my own stuff. But if I want to open up talking to people about my experiences, but I know that if I meet new people, if I talk about stuff that I did in my past, they're not going to care. So if I talk about what I'm doing right now, I would probably get somewhere. But if I'm going to keep talking about what I did 12 years ago, 10 years ago, 9 years ago, 6 years ago, that sort of stuff, they're not going to want to be with me. But then you also succumb talking about mental health issues and where I wasted my 20s with that. The biggest thing why I wasted my 20s, another thing why I wasted was I am not taking my mental health stuff as an excuse for, me being lazy or I don't want to do what I have to do like everybody. No, you just got to understand that, well, even if I have these ailments, mental ailments or physical ailments, I still have to do what I have to do. You know, if I can't do this or I can't do that, then I just can't do it. Okay? Mental health issues had been something I wanted to talk about because throughout my 20s and even in the years I've been doing this channel and being in the Power Rangers fandom, for now paying attention to you Power Ranger fans listening, for all of the fans who heard of me a little bit but never really knew about me much, but this is the video for you right here, because for someone who's been doing this YouTube channel of PR Lost Galaxy 2014 for this long, when I started this channel and when I started doing fan films of Power Rangers and doing the podcast and all of these other types of videos, some people thought of me as crazy or delusional, and I was trying to express my passion for some things, but then some things would get twisted around and then think, I'm just some obsessed, mentally deluded, basement-dwelling loser who thinks he'll ever get this thing off the ground, you know, because I was dealing with a lot of negative people in the fandom, somewhat real life, and anywhere else on the internet. And I think maybe this is another factor why I do need to take some break off the internet, because I had a lot of, I had this stigma of being mentally ill or depressed and stuff because, or I'm just straight up stupid and crazy. When the truth is, you know, I was just trying to be somebody. But all the stuff I've been doing for the last 12 years, 10 years, if you count this channel's inception, this was not the way how to do it. And I know that I wasn't doing what I was supposed to do. And I wanted to do this YouTube channel and stuff because I felt like I was too good to go to college. I was too good to get a job and all that stuff. But I feel like the longer I've done this now, I've gotten bored, exhausted, burnout, and I did spend my 20s doing this a lot because I had nowhere to go. I had nowhere to turn. And I had, you know, thoughts about, like, you know, what other 20-something, especially anyone older than me out here, thinks they want to see another 20-something do videos about something like Power Rangers. And if it was some other childish ass stuff, you know, any nerd retro nostalgia thing like G.I. Joe, Transformers, Voltron sort of stuff, no one cared. I mean, that stuff has now become mainstream, but Power Rangers, even at that time when I was in my 20s, was still a niche thing. But now that Hasbro has it, it's going to take a while for it to be mainstream one week. But when you're still saturated with Kardashian stuff, this, nostalgia reboots and remakes, this, Marvel and DC movies of cinematic universes, this and that, Game of Thrones, Walking Dead, The Office, and all that, this and that, it's hard to escape from all of that. That's why I spent my entire 20s on Power Rangers and also being mentally crazy about the thing I was doing. It's just, I had a really hard, long and hard past in my 20s about that too, because again, I was deemed and labeled as a loser, a stalker by a female, and that tainted me. And then even I had dealt with some people in the fandom who have called me some stuff like, you know, and even in the YouTube comments and some of my older videos in my 20s, I let that mental state, you know, I let that stuff of people labeling me certain, you know, lowbrow stuff and deem me a certain way, and to the point I feel very unwanted, and like I will never amount to anything. And I felt really bad for myself. And when it got so bad to me, and even with the failure of my fan films in my 20s, and with the mental the mental health stigma and the mental health stuff that I've dealt with in my 20s, and even in my late teens when I was just finishing up high school or was about to finish high school and fresh out of it, I was deemed crazy. I was deemed a stalker when it came to a woman. I'm not going to say her name. And I spent the first chunk of my 20s doing that, but then I realized, man, I wasted my time trying to chase that woman. And that's why I got rejected. In fact, I got rejected by anyone that I came across. And I may be rejected, and I will end up getting rejected by anyone in the future too. Get some help and be a better person. But if I continue to go the path I am, then the worst would have yet to come. But back to the main topic about how, like, when I was going through that stuff, I was left like, it's like nobody wanted to know about me and stuff. Of course, yeah, I wasn't doing anything like I should, and I get that I spent most of my life in my 20s still doing this content and doing this stuff at home, because I don't think people in the mainstream working world would care about people like me. And they never will, for those watching out there, especially if you're living in my area. You know, it sucks being looked down upon, unwanted, rejected, or it's just, well, again, no one knows who I am. I never done anything in my 20s. Instead, I was doing this. Like I said, I've been doing this channel for 10 years. I've been on social media for that same amount of time too. I do need to get out there and be somebody and take a break from this content, because I realized, man, I spent all this time in my 20s doing stuff that no one would care about. And that's why I wish that if I had done things differently in my 20s, is reduce the amount of time I'm on YouTube and social media. But I still need to keep my YouTube channel intact and keep uploading and see where I'll go on that. But I realized that my YouTube channel does not, my channel should not rely on the videos I post and make, because, or how many subscribers. That's probably why I cared so much about that stuff than I did about the videos themselves. That's why when you look at any video I've done over the 10 years, well, except for videos that I've deleted or have been left private or unlisted, every single video I've done, again, it was just a bunch of fanfic fluff when I'm supposed to talk about the real world stuff that goes on with Power Rangers or Sentai, or what goes on in the fandom for both. What goes on in the world, and because I know I sound like I'm repeating myself like I did in that other video about wrestling, but I wish that if I cut back from doing this content and focus on real world problems, real world things like relationships and dating, and doing your usual 9-to-5 day job, working at anywhere, whether it be construction work or office jobs or any kind of, jobs, and even like if you're doing like a minimum wage job working at like Burger King or Taco Bell or McDonald's or Chick-fil-A. I could have been doing that stuff, but I spent my 20s and wasted them again still on this. But anyway, but about the relationship thing, because like I said earlier, until I got off topic, I'm glad that part of me in my 20s did not date a lot of girls around my age. Otherwise, like a lot of guys who end up not getting the girl that they want to be a future wife and stuff one day, and future mother of their kids. I really did not want to meet any females that were around my age because I was scared that they would reject me. That was probably one of the reasons why I just said, let me just think about myself and focus on where I've gone through, and let go of someone from my past, and realizing that and especially when I was in high school, knowing, well, the last time I had a thing for a girl, it was back in high school, 12th grade. She was in the 12th grade, and so was I at the time. And I had a thing for her, but then realized she had a boyfriend. And back when I was a special ed student, there was a girl I liked, but now I realized I ran into her recently at this year's Gaithersburg Summerfest, and I found out she already has someone. So happy for her, though, even though we could have had something, but I'm happy for her now. But I moved on. So throughout my 20s, I was struggling to find someone I could relate to, a female I could relate to, because throughout my 20s, I was going around simping and cucking about a woman that I liked until she, turned me down and all of that. But when I had no chance and all that, but of course we didn't had anything. So I spent my entire 20s just by myself, no girlfriend, no friends, guy friends either. I had nobody. And I was alone with those paper dolls for my Power Ranger fan film thing, even though they're just things I made of cardboard and paper and stuff. Even though that stuff was not going to get me nowhere either. But again, thinking about the stigma of when I was accused of being a stalker and stuff, and this is true stuff, people. It hurts, and maybe I'll always will be alone, and I will end up dead alone if I keep up what I'm doing. So instead of me chasing women in my 20s, I should focus on getting my life together. Eventually, someday, someone will come to me instead of me coming to them, because that's why women, even lately, have been, anytime a guy approaches women, they look at a certain guy. I don't want to become that kind of YouTuber and that kind of male YouTuber and stuff. So, but like, maybe you should just focus on my advice for any future 20-something, any young men in their early 20s right now. Focus on yourselves first. Focus on your career, your job, and all of that. If you have some family members who may be ill of cancer, take care of them while you can before they're gone. Just don't do like what I did in my 20s, and because, and especially when it comes to chasing girls. But I know you're going to likely to, because you're still going to do it, because you'd be like, you don't care. Don't take no advice for this 30-year-old loser who makes Power Ranger videos and stuff like that, because he's a loser. So You know, I'm referring to myself being a loser, because I know that negative self-talk is another thing that's been bothering me throughout my 20s and what I have now at 30 with the negative self-talk, because it's something that, and again, I've wasted my 20s. Again, when I mentioned about negative, mental health, I always thought about me talking about myself very negatively because of how people would perceive me, and how, like this one time, like when I was at a summer festival in Gaithersburg a few years ago before COVID, back in 2019, I remember I was by myself, and everybody was like all with their boyfriends and girlfriends, husband, wives, and kids and stuff. And I was just this one loner guy who just came out of nowhere, came straight somewhere out of the dark depths of Gaithersburg type. And I remember I was around a bunch of people who were with people, and I was trying to get with those people who had beers and stuff in their hands, and they looked at me all weird and stuff. And then someone said, like, sir, you need to leave. You're making them uncomfortable. As in, like, I'm being a creep. And like, this brings me back to like how, because again, I wanted to be social because I don't know what to say. I didn't know how to socialize with people who may be into, that kind of stuff. And, the drinking and the partying and cussing, like as we are, because we're adults, right? But I guess since I'm some dude who makes this stuff, it's like no one really cares, and I never will amount to that. So it was hard for me to find someone I could relate to in social situations, because I know everybody's into their thing and I'm into my thing. But again, that, the statement of when I brought that up about making those people uncomfortable back at that year's Summerfest in 2019 and 2019 at Gaithersburg, that I was there. It's like, man, well, I don't have no one I can talk to around here. So again, the socialization part I did struggle with in my 20s, and where I wasted that. And the jobs, okay. I realized I wasted my 20s on several factors, social media, this YouTube channel, being unemployed for a long period of time throughout more than 5 years. I didn't go to college because, again, I was mostly doing this stuff, then doing what I should be doing in society. And I feel like a reject. I do feel like a very unwanted individual anywhere. And I wish if I was more social on social media with those I'm friends with, because the longer I be friends with them, I need to be more social. I can't just be a silent mute button antisocial kind of guy. I need to be social and let go of, again, stuff that happened in my past, and realizing I need to move forward and get with the times now, and let go of what happened 12 years ago. And what I was doing with said Power Rangers fan film. But then also coming about with, when it comes to, speaking of employment and the lack of that, the only way how I would get the stuff I need to make my videos is, I know a lot of you have jobs that actually pay you more, while I do something that's just a menial small job. The only way how I get the stuff I need to make my videos, and I know this is just going to be a little discreet, but I'm not going to tell you what sites I make money to get gift cards and all that to get. I do these online paid survey panels. I do online survey paid panels that do pay you money. And even though one of the hardships of doing surveys on paid survey sites online is that they're not going to pay you everything. You're not going to get rich immediately. You're not going to qualify for every survey. And I've been doing surveys for 12 years. Surveys that do pay you money, that will pay you, once you do the surveys, when you have the highest amount of points or money, to get gift cards for like Amazon, Target, Walmart, that sort of thing. And even I've been doing PayPal, because getting PayPal money doing surveys, and because when I'm unemployed, that's what I do. I do surveys to get gift cards for Amazon and even PayPal and stuff. But even though, that's just not going to do me well. So I wish if I was to get a real job and cut this Power Ranger fan film YouTube channel stuff for a while, or just quit altogether, then I would be someone in the ring. And the reason I was spending more time in this escapist life than the real world life, and stressing myself up all the time, but that's the real world, because the real world, everything, you have to work every day, you have to pay rent and bills and stuff. And I neglected that during my 20s, and I'm still neglecting it now at 30. Well, I was not going to always, with doing them surveys, I'm not always going to have the amount of money I can to get what I need. And also all the money I spent on all of those Power Ranger toys I bought back when Bandai was still doing Power Rangers. If you look at every single toy review of Power Rangers, the toy reviews I had on this channel until I deleted most of all of them due to the changes with YouTube with the COPPA stuff 3 years ago around this time. All that money I spent doing them, I got from those surveys, getting gift cards for Power, for Amazon to get that stuff. Back when, the reason I was doing all of that in my 20s, and even as a Power Rangers fan in his 20s, and when I was struggling to have a real job, I wanted to compete with people who had bigger Power Ranger toy collections than me, and that's what I was thinking. I realized, why do I want to keep doing that? All that money I had from those surveys, I could have spent, all that gift card money I had from those surveys every month. I could have saved that money, gift card money for Amazon gift card money, to spend it on what I actually need, like clothes and food and all of that. But instead, I decided to spend that money on my hobby. I have been spending money on what I actually need, like food and stuff. I have been doing that. But in my earlier 20s and mid-20s, I was doing that a lot. By 2019, when I was 27 years old, I started slowing down, settling down from doing all of that, spending money on this stuff, sort of thing. At least I'm now at 30 years old, I'm spending much less on like what Hasbro has for Power Rangers and other things for Marvel and Star Wars. So I decided not to spend a lot of money on every single action figure they put out for like Marvel Legends or Power Rangers Lightning Collection or anything. I know what I'm going to get when I have the money, but I'm just not going to spend a lot of money right away as a collector, collecting stuff for my hobby and realizing that I was never going to have that. And I need to have money to afford other things like basic necessities like food and water and drinks and even clothes to put on my back and my feet. So, and even also hygiene products like toothpaste. So that's one of the reasons why I've cut back from doing reviews on Power Ranger toys and even Marvel Legends, even though I've only done like 4 Marvel Legends reviews on this channel. So I was not going to collect. So I was not going to buy everything I wanted in my 20s, and also with the amount of money I had each month from doing them surveys, I was not going to have every single Power Ranger toy or Marvel Legends thing or whatever that comes out from these things to support my hobby, and I need to save money on what I actually need. And as of age 30, I decided to cut back from spending money on toys a lot, because in my 20s, if I pull out my collection of Power Ranger stuff next video of all the money I spent on nothing but Power Ranger stuff, because that's all I have is Power Rangers. I don't have no Marvel and Star Wars, as much as I like those properties, and Halo and Transformers and all that nerdy geek stuff. All that money I spent doing them surveys, I could have spent it on what I actually needed. And even surveys, they do have PayPal, and put that into my personal bank account. I could have saved that money to buy, again, food, clothes, and if I have money left over to save up to do, because one of the things I wanted to do in my 20s that I couldn't is save up to do driver's ed, so I can learn how to drive, because basically real life me, I've been walking around to get to certain places because I'm close to some Walmart or Target or Home Depot somewhere, Best Buy. I can do that, but the quickest way to get to places like that is if I had transportation. One of the things I lacked in my 20s was the lack of travel, and I wasted that, and I couldn't even be able to travel around, and also seeing all those that I was doing in my when I discuss social media and my addiction to it next time. And I seeing so many people do all these great altruistic things that I wish I could do in my 20s, but I couldn't. So maybe in my 30s going forward, I'll be able to do those things. But if I save up enough money to actually get to do the things I couldn't do in my 20s, but instead I wasted my 20s bull crapping, and I was just being in here playing video games or whatever I'm doing all the time. And I realized I have also been getting some exercise. So that's one thing I've been doing in my 20s that I'm still doing now, is going outside, getting some air, going out for walks and jogs at least, and get some, exercise. One of the few things I hated about in my 20s, even today, is when I stay at home all day. I do spend too much time in here, and when I do stay in the room all day, I do get crazy and depressed and stuff and going manic and all of that. That's why I do have effort to go outside and get some air, because I don't want to keep spending most of my days every day still just going stir crazy. That's why even when I started my channel in the beginning in 2012 to 2015, I was doing a lot of crazy, stupid stuff in my room and even in this bedroom. But in the videos I did in 2012 to 2015 when I started this channel, when I was still in my old house, making videos in my old bedroom and some videos in my old house's basement, I would be crazy doing stupid stuff. And that's why that's where I spent, where I wasted my 20s there, just doing all, not going outside, getting some air, because again, I was dealing with my father, who was having problems of his own, like alcoholism addiction and stuff. So that would explain why I was doing all that crazy stuff. For all those, if you go back to some of my older stuff, you would wonder why when I started this channel I did a lot of stupid, crazy stuff. I wish I was supposed to be what I was supposed to be, this Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan film, PR Lost Galaxy 2014 channel, but instead I became this amalgamation of so many different things on this channel, and that's why my YouTube channel died, and this channel is already dead, but I'm still making videos and I'm trying to post more. It can be overwhelming making videos every day, and even though you have to do it in order to be somebody on YouTube, but what if you're not cut out to be a YouTuber? Like how I've always had thoughts of, like, this YouTube thing I've been doing in my 20s, and now that I'm 30 years old, what 30-year-old still does YouTube videos? And I have to cut back from making that every day. When I started this channel, I would post videos every day or every 5 days, but now I've reduced it from every day to twice a week to now, as of now, Thursdays to post videos. So it's just basically 1 or 2 videos a day, not twice a week. So maybe make this as a channel update, a little channel update here, micro channel update. So yeah, I need to cut back from making YouTube videos every day and focus on what I have to do and stop the crap. And also work on getting my financial situation together, my mental health, and because I've been neglecting my mental health throughout my 20s and today at 30 because of my YouTube channel and my presence on social media and my obsession wanting to get noticed on social media, but that's not the way to do it. Another thing that I also wasted in my 20s was like a lot of 20-somethings, and even for future 20-somethings right now, they go out to clubs and partying and stuff. But what I did differently in my 20s, and what I wish I should have cut back down doing back then, and what I'm trying to do now at 30, is stop staying up all night every night partying. I'm not always out at clubs. I was never out at clubs, and one of the things I'm glad I didn't do in my 20s, but though I still did it here at home, was partying all the time at night, late at night, like past 12 o'clock, midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, because that's why I had this problem getting up in the mornings now, is because all that time I spent all night staying up playing the same music. I don't play, as someone like me, I don't like playing a lot of music that's out nowadays. I play most of that old school stuff, that old music from the 80s, 90s, 2000s sort of music. I play music to calm me down at night, so when I go to bed, but even though when I wake up I have problems getting up. I'm glad I didn't get wasted partying like with booze or any alcoholic beverages in my 20s. I never, I went my entire 20s without drinking and smoking and all that stuff, but at least I don't, I didn't do that. Instead, I just party as I party, but I have to realize now that I'm at the age where, and that point in my life where I should settle down from all of that, because all that partying all the time can be exhausting when you get around this age, and I'm already feeling it now at 30 years old. Yeah, there's some 30-year-olds that still do some 20s stuff. You gotta know sometime when you get to a certain point, like my point, when for any future 20-year-olds right now, when you get around my age, and if I did a lot of partying every day during my 20s, but I was mainly doing it as more of a pity party for my, a one-man pity party, because I was actually partying out of pity rather than partying with the whole, like if I was with a bunch of people with loud music and drinking and all that, and, all that. I was actually pity partying in my 20s because I was succumbing to failures of what I was supposed to be with my hobby. And also if I had turned this hobby into a job, but I don't want to make money off something I don't own the rights to if I'm making videos about it or films about it. That's one of the reasons why I wasted my 20s for that, because I was spending all that valuable time feeling bad for myself every day. This again succumbs about the mental health issues I had in my 20s and what I have now with mental health problems at 30 years old. All of the things I had to deal with when I was younger, I realized I was going to have a really difficult life as I grew up because although when I spent my 20s wishing that I could have done things differently when I was in 12th grade with that fan film, but I got to realize it's over now and I can't go back to that anymore. Things will not go back the way it was. So as of age 30, I have to realize things will not go back the way it was because, you know, you can't stop time from moving on. You just have to move forward where things are evolving, how things are changing, people are being now. So I'll never see that. And I think that's probably what my problem was when doing these fan films of Power Rangers during the last decade, during my 20s and on YouTube. It's like I wanted to recapture what I had lost at age 18 and 19 when I was in my last year of high school. In 2010, 2011, doing Power Rangers, Lost in Galaxy, The Rest Rakina. And also another thing I had a problem with, I bring up something that, you know, like as if it was already made, and I'll discuss that later about that. But I really need to stop bragging about that thing because it was back when I didn't know jack shit about filmmaking, and yet I did video production 12 years ago in 12th grade. But even then, I realized I was set up for failure anyway. I was never going to chase. You know, I also realized that when it came to my hobby that I wish I could have turned as a job, like something I was passionate about and made it as a job and make money off. You know, I wish that if I had like made it as a job instead of just being just a, you know, stay-at-home hobby thing, I wish I could have done something about it or just do something original. Like, still, I got sick. I was already like fed up with the, you know, my past anyway, because like even during the last 2 years I spent during quarantine in these recent years, when the world shut down, now it's slowly recovering from that. In those last 2 years of my 20s, I spent these last 2 years of my 20s playing video games and excessively being on social media, mainly Facebook and YouTube and Instagram. I can't believe I wasted my last 2 years of my 20s, but well, COVID had to happen, but it was beyond our control. It was beyond mine too. But during those final 2 years of my 20s, I started being fully burnt out from everything I've been doing. And I was having all kinds of serious mental health issues there. I was already addicted to social media to the max. I started getting, you know, I was playing video games quite a bit in my earlier 20s. Once COVID hit and the more I was here at home in quarantine, I started playing video games a whole lot more than I thought I did, because I wanted to use video games as a coping mechanism and social media when all of this was still going on. But then when I couldn't take it anymore and then my mental state got really worse during the pandemic, I had some serious mental health issues there. I was having problems with my brother at home. I was having problems with people on social media I've been friends with for 8 or 9 years. I started breaking off, deleting people off social media. I was having fights with some people on social media. I was everything. I felt like the world is now against me. I had, oh my God. And at 30 years old, I started like, my life is over. It's too late. I failed all that time I spent being on social media, video game stuff with like Grand Theft Auto Online, the social media, you know, the amount of social media time I spend on Instagram or Facebook Messenger and all of that. I'm like, ugh. Well, during those 2 years of COVID, I couldn't do anything. And that's why I lost interest in my fan film content of Power Rangers as of now. Because of those three factors and the big factor with the pandemic. And while it's slightly almost over, but still remains. And I've talked to my therapist via Zoom about my mental health problems and my stories. And I don't know if anyone here on YouTube wants to hear about it, but this is the real me here, as opposed to who I usually am as a YouTuber. And as a YouTuber in the Power Rangers fandom, that's just how it is. It was just emotionally draining, and like all the time in my 20s I spent on Power Rangers and YouTube, social media, and video games in my later 20s now, and I'm trying to cut back from all of that stuff. That's why my fan film content of Power Rangers had failed and my channel had failed, because I was addicted to those three things. I needed to cope with failures of my fan films, and as a failure, as a walking failure, as myself outside of this kind of content. There was also a time in my late 20s, not so long ago, when I was like 29 years old, when I went out for a walk, when I had a serious mental issue. I had thoughts of ending my own life. 12 years of the stuff I've been doing since I was 18 when I did Power Rangers Lost Galaxy, The Rise of Shrekina, to where I was with my mental breakdown about what I saw on WWE, what I discussed last time, and then my social media and them. I realized that stuff was affecting my mental health and what affected my channel, what affected my progress on my fan film content. Because I had a hard time getting over someone that I originally wanted to play said female Power Rangers villain from a certain season for my fan film, until she rejected my film, called me that certain S word that labeled me and rubbed me off the wrong way. And I had thoughts of that other S word since. It messed me up in my 20s, and it really messed me up today at 30. And I felt like I just didn't have no will to live anymore. And again, that's my fault. I wasted my 20s, and I just need to accept that I need to move on from all of that. And I shouldn't burden myself to that stuff anymore. I've waited 10 years to make this kind of video, and even when I was in my 20s, I just started my 20s when I started this stuff. But now that I'm 30 years old, I feel like nobody wants anything to do with me no more. Nobody wants to talk to me no more. Or maybe I don't want to talk to anybody no more. I don't want to socialize anymore. And just wither away, and then people just forget I was ever PR Lost Galaxy 2014, and forget I ever did this fan film content of Power Rangers and all the stuff I could have been, instead of me still being at home, being on social media all the time and just doom scrolling, seeing other people doing all these great altruistic things in the real world while I'm still at home just looking at this stuff on people's social media and YouTube and all that stuff, and I'm still here just making pointless, frivolous content no one gives a shit about. So even though when I turned 30 last month, I felt like my life was already over. When my 30th birthday came last month and a half, I didn't want to celebrate my birthday much. I didn't get a birthday cake or a thing of donuts or none of that, no. And after I turned 30, I just felt like I'm a dead person already. I'm dead inside, and I felt like my life was already over. My channel was over. This fan film content is over, and I just felt like a failure. When I did do a fan film of Power Rangers Lost Galaxy at the peak of my 20s, and PRLG 2014, but that was already a failure given the stuff that I had gone through, like online harassment and bullying, but I'll discuss that later in a later vlog during, discussing my time in the fandom. I know this video is going on long enough like the last one, but probably a little longer than that. I just hope you guys understand about the pain of why I wasted my 20s, the way how I was, partying all the time, late at night, the social media, the binge watching stuff on streaming services. Nothing wrong with that stuff either. I even forgot to mention all the times I used to binge eat. I was a binge eater in my early to mid 20s because I was going through, like, again, while I was still unemployed and stuff, I had a serious binge eating disorder. That would explain why, I'm working on progress trying to cut down from eating a lot of food all the time, and then next thing you know, once all that food is ate up, where am I going, again, I have to go and do what I have to do on the internet, do that paid survey thing, get some gift cards, get some, gift cards to buy some food and stuff. I just don't want to keep eating a lot. That's why even in the 2 years since quarantine and all this, I slowed down eating a lot because I'm trying to work on not being a binge eating person, eating up so much. Well, even all I do is eat junk food, but I need to eat more healthier. But it's so hard for people to eat healthier, but it's so easy eating all that junk stuff, cookies, snacks, candy and all that. But nothing wrong with that stuff, or even fast food like McDonald's and whatever. So that's one of the reasons why how I look now, and as I'm my hairline's receding and I'm getting wrinkles now, and you're not going to look as how you was when you started. Even I know I'm not going to look how I looked when I started for long, given how I haven't taken well care of myself these last few years. It's sad that how, but all I have to accept now is that, yeah, I may have wasted my 20s, but what I'm going to try to do is not try to make my 30s a repeat of that past life, because my 20s was an absolute train wreck. I hated my 20s much like how I hated the 2010s. I hated how things turned out in the 2010s for me. That would explain why I did all that crazy, stupid stuff in the last 12 years before age 30. And I also mentioned about how I was, depressed, anxious, and how I felt rejected and unwanted. And I just wanted to express the real me and what kind of person I've been for years. And that's one of the reasons why I needed to this isn't me doing it for attention. This is actually how I really feel deep inside and what goes on off camera and on camera and outside of the realm of what this channel's about. I know this sounds like a bummer video, but I just want to give some advice for any future 20-somethings, and also for anyone who's close to being 30. Also for any of those 25 to 29-year-olds out there watching. I hope you guys don't go through what I, as a 30-something who had wasted his 20s in here or out there, went through, and don't do what I did, or any future 20-something that probably did a YouTube video like this. And all I know my version of this I wasted my 20s vlog is similar to everybody else's, where I talked about how they wish they did this or did that, but now I have to accept and move on that my 20s are over, and I'm never going to see 20-something me ever again, even though when I was stupid and dumb and I didn't know nothing, I had no experience in anything. I just hope you guys understand where I'm coming from. And for any of the 30-somethings like me and 40-somethings that had already been through it, I wish that anyone older than me should give me some advice as a 30-something. What should I do now? Since even though some will tell me quit the Power Ranger stuff, quit the YouTube and all that, and be somebody worthwhile, because I know I'm going to be that, but working on that. But it's just I need to cut back from the stuff I've been doing for 10 years. Nothing wrong with Power Rangers, nothing wrong with this hobby, nothing wrong with doing fan films, nothing wrong with this YouTube channel stuff, but I only have one life to live, like we all do. Make it worthwhile. Because when the day comes when you're no longer here, you realize, man, what kind of life you had. And I know I had the life I've had for the last 10 years on YouTube and on the internet. It will be a while until, or do it immediately right now, get everything together and cut the crap I've been doing. Because it's time I grew up, tap up, and already 30 years old. It's time to get serious, time to get darker, I will always do what I do on YouTube and social media, but it's just not all the time anymore. I'm still in the middle of my fan film stuff of Power Rangers, but when that is done, I don't know what will come next for me, because I know people will tell me, well, since all that time I could have had going to college and getting a job, well, that's what I should have been doing. I was supposed to do something I thought I was passionate about, but then I got obsessed and then later sad and miserable about it. Because I get that, yeah, I knew that eventually that paper doll stuff, doing those Power Rangers Lost Galaxy fan films with those paper dolls, was not going to get me anywhere. That's why I hope that when I do this new movie, fan film reboot with the 12-inch action figure costumes from existing Titan Hero 12-inch figures or DC 12-inch figures, see where that goes. If that doesn't, then maybe I'll just have to think even more bigger than what I should have done all these years ago with this content. Or maybe I should just stop doing this thing and just do something more bigger and think of something bigger than what I'm doing. That's what held me back all these years. And yeah.